Hi, this is Brian with ActiveMelody.com. This week's guitar lesson is all about complementing the band. What can you do when you play along with a jam track or play along with other people? How can you stand out? In this jam track we're going to be playing over, there's a keyboard and there's a bass and other things that are going on, but you don't want to just strum the same chords that the keyboard player is doing. What can you do to change up the timing a little bit, throw in some fill licks, and just make your playing kind of stand out while complementing the band? That's always the goal that you should have no matter what instrument you're playing. So I've got the lesson split into two parts. In this video we'll take a look at the first half. If you'd like to watch the second half, download the tablature and get the MP3 jam tracks. For this you can go to ActiveMelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page and do a search for EP338. Alright, so I had a hard time coming up with a really good descriptive title for the lesson this week because there's so much material we're going to be covering. We're going to be doing timing things, we're going to be talking about fill licks in between chords, we're going to be playing some lead stuff, and it's just a hybrid of different styles. There's some country licks thrown in, there's some like old soul kind of rhythm, there's some blues lead like B.B. King style, so it's all over the map in terms of what we're going to be learning, but it all comes down to one principle, which is it's your job to complement the band. Always should be when you're playing guitar with other people. And so that's what this lesson is really designed to do, is to give you some creative ideas as a guitar player for how do you complement the band. We've already got a keyboard in the jam track that's playing the chords, so you don't necessarily just need to strum the chords like you would see if you saw them in a chord chart. So what can you do to throw in some different timing and some fill licks and things to make everybody else sound good? And it's not about you standing out per se, but somehow you end up standing out when you make other people sound good. So you always have to kind of keep that basic principle in mind. That's what the really good guitar players do, is they're not trying to showboat, but they're just trying to make everybody else sound good. And in the end, they end up sounding really good by doing that. Okay, so let's talk about this song. So this song is in D minor, and I'm going to call out the chords first. So you can write these down. If you're not a premium member, you can write them down and have them in front of you. If you are a premium member, you have them in the tablature. But song is in D minor. So we start on the D minor chord, and then we go to the A7, then back to the D minor, and then down to a B flat or an A sharp, then F, G minor, C. And then we go back to that A7, which gets us back into the loop. Now I realize that's a lot of chords. But once we get into this, you're going to realize that by learning these chords and knowing how to play them in different spots, it's just going to open up the whole fretboard for you. That's really what I'm wanting you to get out of this, is to think about the entire thing, not just when you think of chords or being a rhythm player. Don't think about just the first 3 frets. There's a whole other set of frets to work with. All right, so the way this thing kicks off is with a little pickup like that, and I'm palm muting that, so I'm letting the palm of my right hand rest on the strings here to get that sound. And we're playing open string 5, 3rd fret 5th string, back to the open 5th string, and then the 5th fret 5th string. But when I play the 5th fret 5th string, it's hard for me to say, I'm barring all 6 strings. And the reason for that is right after that I'm going to play that D minor chord. And so when I'm making this chord here, I've got my bar on the 5th fret, and then these 3 fingers are making up the A minor chord shape. Now they're playing the D minor chord, but if you'll look at the shape they're playing, if you were to think of your A minor down in first position, slide it up, capo it with your finger, you're playing a D minor. And if you want to know more about the minor chord shapes, there's 3 minor chord shapes that are most commonly used. I have those in lesson EP338. So you can go into that lesson and learn more about these chord shapes. But that's how we start the song up. Now the timing of this, when we get into that strum pattern, what I'm playing is down, up, down, up. So the first down is the chord, and then there's a muted up and a muted down, and then you play the chord again as an upstroke. Sounds like that. Now I'm probably making it more complicated than it is. If you don't want to add the muted strums, you don't have to. I'm just putting that in just so you can start to feel it a little bit. You could play You can do it like that as well. But you're trying to accent the 2 and the and of 3 if we're counting this out. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay. Then I go right into the A7 chord. Now, I'm just going to make the A7 chord here because I'm already here. I've got my bar there on the 5th fret, so there's no need to jump down and play an A7 anywhere else. That's another sort of guitar pro tip that most of you probably already know. But find a chord that's in the nearest neighborhood to where you're at so you don't have to move your hand as much. So I've got the bar there, so my ring finger goes down on the 7th fret, 5th string. My middle finger goes down on the 6th fret, 3rd string. Play the A7 chord. And then right after that, I throw in a little fill lick there. Now, what is that lick? It's easy to play. It's all played on the 2nd string. We're up here on the 8th fret. We do a bend and release. And then down to the 6th fret, 2nd string. Now, what is that? That would be minor pentatonic scale, pattern 4. And this will be a big takeaway for a lot of you. If you connect, and by the way, your patterns, there's 5 different patterns of the minor pentatonic scale, but it's just the same 5 notes. There's only 5 notes in the minor pentatonic scale. You're just repurposing them in little groups, and that's all the patterns are. Just to help you sort of memorize it and think about it differently. But pattern 4 is right up here. The takeaway for you in this is to connect pattern 4 to this chord shape. So when you're playing a minor chord like this, you can now very quickly go into pattern 4 of that minor pentatonic scale. So connect in your mind, connect those two, pattern 4 to this minor A minor chord shape, even though that's not an A minor chord, it's the A minor shape out of the Caged, the minor version of Caged. Anyway, if you can connect those two things, then if you're ever playing this minor chord, you can very quickly go into a little lead part or fill lick off of that chord shape. Okay, let's back it up from the beginning. Then we go back to the D minor, and I'm accenting the same 2 and the and of 3. And then I come down to the B flat. And actually I played a B flat sus2. So I played it like that. It just gives a different feel. I like to throw in these sus chords when I can. And to play that, you bar all 6 strings on the 1st fret, and then your ring finger and your pinky are on the 3rd fret, strings 3 and 4. We're playing strings 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And to play off of that, to play the fill lick to that chord, instead of jumping out of that and going to a scale, I just pick notes out of the chord. So that's 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you play the chord. And remember that going forward. If you ever want to just sort of throw in a little fill, you can always just hold down the chord and then play the chord and then pick the notes out of the chord. That's a commonly used technique. Now after that, I go to the F chord. And again, I'm just going to the F chord down here. I've already got the bar in place, so these fingers just reposition, and I go right into the F chord. And then I throw in this fill lick that goes. Now this fill lick, even though it's simple, 3 notes, there's a lot you can do with this. So let me show you how to play it first. I'm barring the first 5 strings on the 3rd fret. I'm starting on the 5th string, doing a hammer-on between the 3rd fret and the 5th fret on that 5th string. And then we're going to play the 4th string, which is behind the bar on the 3rd fret. Now, why I said that's important, simple sounding, but look at what you can do off of that. Now, what I want you to keep in mind is, I want you to think of this chord shape, and then I want you to think of the 3rd fret to the 5th fret. On the 6th string, the 5th string, and the 4th string. So you have this little box here. So all I'm doing there is I'm playing off of this little box, which is an extension of this chord shape. So that should be a light bulb for a lot of you out there. And if you think about this chord shape, you can use it anywhere. You can make any chord out of this shape. This is just your E chord shape out of Caged. This is why Caged is so important, why I keep coming back to it in every lesson. So if we're playing in G, look at all these little fills you can do off of that chord shape. So just connect that box to the chord shape, and now you've got this whole new set of licks And you can spend hours doing that. I'm telling you, there's a lot of things that you can do. Okay, let's back it up from the beginning. We've got... Then we go into the G minor chord. So after that, I've already got my finger in position, my index finger. So go ahead and make the bar and play that G minor chord. Now these two fingers are on the 5th fret, strings 5 and 4. That's your E minor chord shape. You slide it up. And then after I play it twice, down, down, my pinky comes up here to the 5th fret 1st string while I've got the bar on the 3rd fret. So I do that. And I think in the tab I put strings 2 and 1. And so it's just a nice little embellishment off of this minor chord shape. That's another thing you can remember going forward. And that's another nice embellishment when you're playing this minor chord shape, that you can come up here with your pinky and add that little fill to it. Okay, so we have from the F, G minor, then we go to the C. Now the way I'm making the C is I'm barring the first 4 strings here on the 5th fret. This may be a different way for a lot of you to think about playing a C chord, but all it is, if you think of your C chord like this, which would be using your A chord shape out of Cage, instead of me playing it like this, I'm just grabbing the little triad that I need out of it. So I'm playing strings 4, 3, and 2 off of that 5th fret. So all I need to play is that little triad. I don't need to play the full C chord because the bass notes are already being covered by the bass player in the jam track. So after I played that C triad, I threw in this little country style fill lick. And what I'm doing for that is I'm doing a half bend on the 5th fret 2nd string. And then I come down to the 7th fret 3rd string. Now these are just notes. So notes out of the C major scale. So if you're wondering why those notes are working, here's how you want to think about this. If you think about this chord that we're playing here, you've got your major pentatonic scale, pattern 1, right there, and that chord is inside of major pentatonic scale, pattern 1. That could be a big light bulb for a lot of you. So if you think of this chord shape now, you've got all of these major pentatonic scale licks that are right there, and they're all that pattern 1 stuff, which is like I think kind of like the home base of playing lead. So you can think of it that way, but that's where those notes are coming from. And then after that I went. So let me show you how to play this. Now this is where the song goes back to that A7 chord, and you can hear it. I'm basically just building that chord shape. So I'm barring the first 3 strings on the 5th fret, playing strings 2 and 3. I do a hammer on to the 6th fret 3rd string, and then ring finger goes down on the 7th fret 4th string. And then I come down to the 5th fret 4th string, which would be in the A7. Right? So if you think of that A7 chord, there I'm just playing the A chord. I've just built the A chord. But then coming down to that note, hitting that one note, you're playing the notes out of that A7 chord shape. So it gives it that kind of a bluesy sound when you throw in those seven notes for the dominant 7 chord. So let's back up from the beginning. That's the first time through. Let's go through it, and then we'll go into the next part. Right? So it starts to make sense. Even without the jam track, because we're playing the chords and playing the fill licks, it actually makes perfect sense. So we come into the second part, and the second part, at this point, it's going to repeat those same chords. So I'm not introducing new chords here. Same chords in the same order. So now we come back to the D minor. So what I'm playing here is I'm playing strings 1, 2, and 3 off of the 10th fret. That would be your D minor chord shape up here. So again, I'm thinking about the E minor chord shape, but I'm playing it all the way up here, so I'd be barring on the 10th fret, and that would be a D minor chord if we played it up here. But I don't need to play the full chord, I just need the top part of it, because the band is playing the rest of it, right? So I just played the top 3 strings out of it, and then instead of me going to the A7 and back to the D minor, I just went into a little lead part here, and that's something you can do when you're doing fill licks and playing this sort of style. You can break away from playing chords and just work in some lead stuff. And I could have done this longer, but what I ended up playing was D minor pentatonic scale, pattern 1. So I'm doing a full bend here on the 13th fret, 2nd string. And then I do a half bend. Both of those are done on the same fret there. And then I come down to the 10th fret, 2nd string. And again, this is all minor pentatonic scale, pattern 1. And then that's a slide from the 13th fret to the 12th fret on the 3rd string, down to the 10th fret, 3rd string, and then back to the 12th fret, 3rd string, back to the 10th fret. And then my ring finger goes down on the 12th fret, 4th string, and then while that note is ringing out, I go ahead and bar on strings 1, 2, and 3 on the 10th fret. And look at what I'm doing there. I'm just playing that D minor chord. I'm not playing the full chord with all 6 strings. I'm just playing the top 4 strings out of it. But that's all I'm doing, is I'm just hinting back at that chord. So I never actually played an A7 chord. I just played some lead stuff, but it still worked and it still sounded just as good. We're going to accent in the same places, which will be the 2 and the and of 3. 1, 2, and 3, and, right? And then where does it go after that? It goes to the B flat chord. Well, I don't want to jump from here all the way down to here. This is why caged is so important. Where are the other B flat chords? Well, I could play here, I could play here, I could use the D shape and play it up here, or I could play that C shape up here, and that's what I'm doing. So what's nice about that is, look at this. I've got the same bar on the same fret. So you can stay in the same neighborhood. I don't have to jump into a different zip code. I can stay right here and still play that B flat chord. So we have look at that. My ring finger stayed in place on the 12th fret, 4th string. And then I reposition these fingers where I've got my middle finger now on the 11th fret, 2nd string. And then I've got that same bar there, barring the first 4 strings, actually the first 3 strings, on the 10th fret. And that's the B flat chord, or A sharp. And then what I did after that was a little fill lick there. And that lick is really just the F major scale. But I wasn't thinking about that so much. I was just thinking, I already knew, kind of like we did when we played down here, or we had, you have your C chord and played that. I'm basically doing the same thing here, right? It's the exact same lick. I'm playing off of this chord shape. So I've got my, what I'm doing is I'm doing a half bend on the 10th fret, 2nd string, doing a half bend and release, 12th fret, 3rd string, 10th fret, 3rd string, and then down to the 10th fret, 4th string. And what I do there is I go ahead and bar that, and I play strings 4, 3, and 2. Look at that. That's that same little triad, like when we played the C chord, and we're playing that C triad. If I do it here, what chord is that? It's an F chord. So instead of me playing an F chord anywhere else, I can do them all right here. This, to me, is a good example of the magic, or the power, really, of caged, the whole cage system, and why it's so powerful. And again, I like to reference this all the time, but it's EP338 if you want to know all about caged and all the different shapes. That's the key to the whole thing, is being able to play these chord shapes and then connect the scales to those chord shapes. And then you've got everything. So let's back it up from when we go first go into that D minor. There's your F. And look at that. There's that little fill lick. It's similar to the one we did down here, but this fill lick is off of this chord shape. So let me explain this here. So we've got we're playing on the 5th string, and I'm doing a hammer-on between the 10th fret and the 12th fret on the 5th string. So do the hammer-on, and then I'm going to play strings 4 and 3 behind this bar here. Now this will be the another big huge takeaway. So remember what we learned off of the F chord down here, where you've got this little box. Well, if we look at that same chord, so we're playing an F chord, but now we're using the A shape. Remember down here we were using the E shape. If we're playing the F chord down here, you've got that same little box thing that happens. In this case it would be the 10th fret to the 12th fret, but we don't play the 6th string, we play the 5th, 4th, and 3rd. So think about that. So now you've got, and then you've got, right? So now you've got 2 chord shapes, and you've got this same looking little extension that happens off of both of those chord shapes. That alone will give you a lot of options for fill licks and solo ideas and things you can do rhythmically. There's just so much you can do with those chord shapes and then those extensions. Okay, so we have the F chord, the little lead there, and then we go to the G minor. And what I'm playing is I'm playing the G minor up here. So look at this. This is that A minor chord shape. A minor chord, let's play it up here. We're barring, and when we bar it up here and we bar on the 10th fret and play strings 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, you're playing a G minor. So I can stay in the same neighborhood and play all these chords right here. So I played the chord and then I picked the notes out. So it'd be 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, just like we did here. And then I came back down here to the C chord, that same C chord here. And the reason I did this as opposed to a C chord here was because I wanted to play this little double stop thing, this harmonized 6. So same C chord there, and we're going to play strings 2 and 3, and then while that bar is down, middle finger goes down to the 6th fret 2nd string, and then pinky comes down on the 8th fret 2nd string. So you have nice sound while the chord rings out, and then watch this. That's strings 2 and 4 on the 5th fret. And why those 2 strings? There's your C chord, right? Just 2 notes out of the chord. Think of it that way. Slide that down 2 frets. Same 2 strings, 2 and 4. And then down here, so that's just your C chord down here, but strings 2 and 4, right? Okay, and that's what we're going to cover in this first part. There's actually another part to this which is really cool. You go into, and I'm going to save that for premium members, where we go into a B.B. King style lead. But it's too much to try and cram into this video. So if you're not a premium member, look into it. You get the jam tracks, you get the tablature, you get all the extra video material, and you get like almost 10 years worth of archives. You know, I've just been doing this for years and years, every Friday. So let me back up and play through this. I'll play from the beginning, all of this, and we're doing it without the jam track, just playing it, but it's going to stand on its own. I'll play through it, and then I'll see you in part 2, and we'll go through the rest of it. Here we go from the beginning.